September 5th, 2021. A momentous day in this young couple's life. They did something on this day that most young relationships can't do these days. Justin and Amber Hicks bought their dream home. And on this day, they moved into that home at 5059 Robina Drive here in Cobb County. They bought this home just days after their son Jacob's birthday. But 73 days later, 73 short days in their achievement of this home, on November the 18th, 2021, a family's worst nightmare came true.
I want to confirm that you guys have called them on their phones and they didn't answer.
We've tried calling multiple times now. My brother's phone rings a few times if we're going to voicemail. My sister-in-law's phone immediately goes to voicemail. According to my mother, they've been off social media for about 12 hours now.
Okay.
The morning of November 18th shattered this family. November 18th, not only was this family shattered, but so was the back window of that house. And that is what they found. But we got to go back just a couple hours. November the 17th, 2021. On this day, it was a day just like every single other day for Justin, Amber, and Jacob. They had come home that night like any other day. Justin and Amber got Jacob ready for bed, got him fed, cleaned up the house, and put him down for the night. In this home that they are finally moved into and enjoying, Jacob and Amber are cuddling up on the couch. Jacob is upstairs sleeping in his bed. Amber watching the baby monitor to her side. They sat on this couch to watch TV and enjoy the night. But what the Hicks didn't know is that on this night, there was someone lurking on the outside of their home. They had just recently put up this Christmas tree. This Christmas tree was right next to the living room, connected. What they didn't know was that there was someone outside looking at this Christmas tree. And around 10 p.m. that night, this family's worst nightmare came true. Around 10 p.m., the back window of their home was broken into. The Hicks were unaware. They were defenseless. They were executed. All while Jacob was asleep upstairs. This is the state of Georgia versus Matthew Lanz. Now, you've read out the charges right before I started opening, but I do find that it's important to go through those charges as we put up evidence through this case during this week so that you know what to look for. Now, count one in the indictment is malice murder. This is did unlawfully with malice aforethought cause the death of Timothy Hicks, a human being, by shooting Timothy Hicks with a firearm. Now, just for the court, Timothy Hicks is the legal name of Justin Hicks. It's Timothy Justin Hicks. He just went by Justin, but that is his legal name. Count two, malice murder, did unlawfully with malice aforethought cause the death of Amber Hicks, a human being, by shooting Amber Hicks with a firearm. Count three, felony murder, while in the commission of a felony, to wit, home invasion, as set forth in count 7 of this indictment, did cause the death of Timothy Hicks, a human being, irrespective of malice. Count 4, while in commission of a felony, to wit, home invasion, as set forth in the count 7 of this indictment, did cause the death of Amber Hicks, a human being irrespective of malice. Now, this is count 7, which those two prior counts are predicated upon, which is his home invasion, did unlawfully without authority and with the intent to commit forcible felonies therein, to wit, murder and aggravated assault, while in possession of a firearm, to wit, a handgun, a deadly weapon, enter the dwelling house of another, to wit, the Hicks residence located at 5059 Verbena Drive, Northwest, Ackworth, Georgia, while it was occupied by Timothy Hicks, Amber Hicks, and Jacob Hicks, persons with authority to be present therein. Now jumping back to count 5, this is another felony murder count. While in commission of a felony, to wit, aggravated assault, as set forth in count 8 of this indictment, did cause the death of Timothy Hicks, a human being irrespective of malice. Then count 8, in which that is predicated upon, aggravated assault, did make an assault upon the person of Timothy Hicks with a firearm, a deadly weapon, to wit, a handgun. Count 6, felony murder, while in commission of a felony, to wit, aggravated assault, as set forth in count 9 of this indictment, did cause the death of Amber Hicks, a human being, irrespective of malice. Then the predicated count of count 9, aggravated assault, did make an assault upon the person of Amber Hicks with a firearm, a deadly weapon, to wit, a handgun. Count 10, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, did unlawfully have on and within arm's reach of his person a firearm, to wit, a handgun, during the commission of murder, home invasion, and aggravated assault, felony crimes involving the person of Timothy Hicks. Count 11, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, did unlawfully have on and within arm's reach of his person a firearm, to wit, a handgun, during the commission of murder, home invasion, and aggravated assault, felony crimes involving the person of Amber Hicks. Count 12, cruelty to children in the second degree, did with criminal negligence cause Jacob Hicks, a child under the age of 18 years old, cruel and excessive physical and mental pain by leaving Jacob Hicks's parents deceased in the home with said child, resulting in the 2-year-old child being alone and unsupervised for approximately 12 hours, during which Jacob Hicks was unable to feed himself, change his diaper, or get the attention of his parents, causing him excessive physical and mental pain. Count 13, tampering with evidence, did knowingly conceal physical evidence, to wit, shell casings, said evidence involving the prosecution of the offenses of murder, home invasion, and aggravated assault, with the intent to prevent the apprehension of and obstruct the prosecution of said accused. To wit, said accused did remove shell casings from the murder scene so as to avoid apprehension and otherwise obstruct the prosecution of himself. Now that's the counts in this indictment that we are moving forward through this trial, and those are the elements that the court has defined. But I do find that it would be helpful that we kind of put in front of the court a roadmap of who we're going to hear from, what we're going to hear about, and so forth. So I'd like to introduce you to the parties. This is the Hicks. This is Justin, Amber, and Jacob. To the left, we have Justin Hicks. As I previously stated, Justin's full legal name is Timothy Justin Hicks, but he went by Justin. Throughout this trial, we'll be referring to him as Justin. He was 31 years old at the time of his death, and he was married to Amber Hicks. He had one son, Jacob Hicks, and he was a Cherokee County firefighter. Then here on the right, we have Amber Hicks. She was 31 years old at the time of her death. She was married to Justin Hicks. She had the one son, Jacob, and she was an audiology assistant. And then we have Jacob Hicks. He was 2 years old at the time of his murder. He's 6 now. He was home at the time of the murder. He was alone. with them several hours as their deceased bodies were within that home. And you're going to hear evidence that Jacob tried to cuddle with his parents as they lay deceased on that couch. You will hear and see evidence that Jacob tried to play with his parents with toys, as you will see toys on Jacob, or Justin. During that time, you will hear that Jacob had no ability to get their attention of anyone. He had no ability to get food or water or change his diaper. As I previously stated, the Hicks moved into 5059 Rabina Drive on September 5th, 2021. For the court, I have a visual map, which the location of these homes is very important. Now, the Hicks residence is located here on Menandra Way and Verbena Drive, the corner there circled in yellow. Now the defendant, Matthew Lanz, he was 22 years old at the time of this murder. He's now 26. Throughout this trial, you will hear about his family, and you will hear interviews of several of his family members. His father is Scott Lanz. His mother is Teresa Lanz. You will hear about his older brother, Austin, and you will also hear that he is deceased. You will also hear that he has 2 additional sisters. The defendant grew up at this home at 600 Delphinium Boulevard, where he lived with his parents and all of his siblings. Now, back to the map where we've already indicated where the Hicks residence is. Here on this map, you can see the defendant's residence is right behind the Hicks residence. It's important for the court to know that the backs of these houses are actually facing each other. So if you would walk out the back door of the Hicks residence, you would be looking at the back door of the defendant's residence. You're also going to hear that the defendant was a University of Georgia student. He had an apartment up there. It was located at 435 North Church Street, apartment 4, Athens, Georgia. You are also going to hear that the defendant drives a 2008 black Lexus GS 350. Now, having that little understanding as to these parties, I'm going to go through the timeline as to the events that you are going to hear about. So we're going to go to November 17th, 2021. You're going to see numerous surveillance videos throughout this trial of surrounding residents. Here at 7:09, you will see surveillance video of the last known footage of Justin, Amber, and Jacob. This is the last known footage of Amber and Justin being alive, and that's at 7:09 p.m. You're going to hear that the defendant gave an interview in this case, and you will hear that the defendant admits to driving from his Athens apartment to his 600 Delphinium home, the Lanz family home, that night. And just for a quick reminder, that is right behind the Hicks residence. Now, you're going to see some additional surveillance video footage of surrounding residents of the Lanz and Hicks residence. You are going to see that at 9:20 p.m. on November the 17th, 2021, the defendant drives his black Lexus towards the direction of his home. And that is towards his home. And you are going to hear during the defendant's interview that he admits to parking at his house at the 600 Delphinium residence, where he parks in the driveway, and then he admits to going into the backyard, kind of walking around, and smoking a cigarette. You will hear that the defendant admits that he never enters inside his home. He only stays outside of the 600 Delphinium house. Now, to just preface some of these surveillance videos, they are incredibly difficult to see because of how dark they are. However, you will hear from Detective Smith in this case, who is going to walk through these videos and show you where to look as to where you can see the defendant walking from to and from his residence to the Hicks residence. So between 9:31 and 9:32, it can be seen the defendant walking around the rear and side of the Hicks residence. Now at 9:32, you will see the defendant walk back towards his residence. And like I said, as this plays, it is difficult to see, but as the evidence is presented to the court, we will point you to where to look. Now, between the times of 9:43 p.m. and 9:44 p.m., you will actually see the defendant again walking the property line. Now at 9:55, you will actually see in this video, as soon as I press play, you will see that a light turns on. At 9:55, you will see the exterior mounted motion sensor light connected to the Hicks residence at 9:55 p.m. Now this light is located right where that window is that I previously told the court about. Now, about 15 minutes later, you will see surveillance footage of the defendant actually leaving the residence away from the Hicks residence. You will hear that the defendant then drove from his 600 Delphinium house back to his apartment in Athens. It's about an hour 45 to 2 hour drive. You will hear that the defendant admits to driving back from his family home to his apartment in Athens. You are going to hear that the defendant's phone was seized when he was taken into custody. A Celebrite extraction was done of his phone, and it will show that between the times of 10:16 p.m. on November the 17th to 12:43 a.m. of November the 18th, so leading into the next morning, his phone was placed into airplane mode. So while the evidence is going to show on his way back to Athens, his phone was in airplane mode. Which leads us to November the 18th, 2021. On that morning, 9:34 a.m., that is when police received a 911 call for a welfare check, trying to get in contact with Justin and Amber. You will hear on that 911 call of a broken window on the back side of the house. And it's there that's when this investigation began. You are going to see body camera and photos of this home. And when officers arrive, this is what they find. They find this broken glass of the back window of the home. Inside, you can hear a dog, and you can hear Jacob kind of making some noise on the inside. Now, there is no response with Justin and Amber. You will watch the body camera footage as Officer Brown makes his way, as he's the first officer inside the home. He makes his way into the home where that Christmas tree is. As he looks inside, he sees little Jacob peering around the corner, hiding. Officer Brown will testify that his priority was him, Jacob. He picks up Jacob and gets him out of there. You will hear that Jacob was covered in blood, he was wet, and he had a dirty diaper. It's here in the living room, officers find both Justin and Amber deceased here in the living room. You can see that Christmas tree just right behind them. Crime scene was able to find and locate 3 9mm casings and 2 projectiles. You will hear about more projectiles, and as you hear from the medical examiner, but on scene that is what's found. You're going to hear that there was 5 gunshot wounds to Justin and Amber, where those gunshot wounds were the cause and manner of death for both Justin and Amber. Shortly thereafter, the 911 call and the investigation began. As investigations take hold, officers and cars are all around this location of the Verbena house, the Hicks household. Around 12 p.m., Teresa Lanz, the defendant's mother, finds out about this murder. Teresa Lanz then goes from the 600 Delphinium house up to the defendant's apartment up in Athens. You will hear that Teresa Lanz arrives to the defendant's apartment around 2:30 p.m. on November the 18th, 2021. You will hear that she found the defendant sleeping at 2:30 in the afternoon and would pound on the door and try to get his attention. When the defendant would then come to his mother at the front door, he was in possession of a firearm. You're going to hear from Scott Lanz in an interview that shortly after Teresa Lanz got to the apartment up in Athens, he would then arrive. He also found the defendant having a firearm. You're going to hear that Teresa and Scott took that firearm from the defendant in a .40 caliber magazine. They would then leave the defendant at his apartment and drive back to the 600 Delphinium house. You are going to hear that the defendant admits that his parents came to his apartment in Athens and that they took his gun from him. Shortly after that, on November the 18th, later that night, officers are actually executing a search warrant of the Lanz household. That is where Teresa and Scott are at the house, and you will hear that Scott tells police, "I took a gun from the defendant and I placed it inside of the house. It's located in a sports coat pocket upstairs in a closet." Officers would then search the house where they would find a Zev OZ 9mm pistol in the upstairs closet in a sport coat jacket. You are going to hear about a DNA examination of that Zev OZ 9mm pistol. You're going to hear from forensic biologist Ted Bill with the ATF that he conducted a DNA comparison of swabs of the pistol to that of the defendant. You are going to hear that the DNA profile of the swabs of the pistol are consistent to that of the defendant. You are also going to hear that there was a firearm examination done of this firearm. And you are going to hear from firearm tool mark examiner Vanna Kelly with the ATF, where she was sent the 3 casings that were found on scene, and then conducted test fires of the Zev OZ 9mm that was sent to her, and compared those 3 casings to the test fires that came from that Zev OZ 9mm. You are going to hear that the casings that are found on the scene were fired by this Zev OZ 9mm pistol. Now, jumping back to the timeline, November 19th, 2021. You are going to hear around 9 a.m., 90 Cameron Glen Drive in Sandy Springs, Georgia. You are going to hear about a 911 call of a burglary in progress. You are going to hear that Sandy Springs police officers arrive to that residence and they find the defendant inside the home, upstairs in this home. You are going to hear that the officers enter that home and command the defendant to come down from the upstairs. You are going to watch the body camera footage of this interaction with the defendant. After several minutes of commanding him to come down, the defendant would make his way down the staircase, dressed fully in camouflage, several layers with mask and a fishing hat. You will then watch as the defendant, as soon as he hits that bottom step, attacks one of the officers there. You will see and watch that the defendant then stabs the Sandy Springs sergeant in the back of the neck multiple times. It is at this point that officers then shoot the defendant twice. They shoot him in the neck, in the right upper chest. You will watch the defendant be taken out of that home and into the front yard where he was subdued, he was tended to, taken to the hospital, and then into custody. Now, I want to talk about the three main pieces of evidence that you're going to hear about, and really they're just categories of evidence. Those three pieces of evidence are digital evidence, statements, and forensic evidence. What I mean by digital evidence, it's really the evidence that puts the timeline together. The surrounding surveillance videos of homes surrounding the Hicks and the Lanz residence that show the defendant's arrival, the departure, and then in addition to the defendant's phone extraction being placed in the airplane mode. You're also going to hear about Justin and Amber's phone extraction, which show their last known activities. Now, statements. The defendant's statements to law enforcement, Scott Lanz's statements to law enforcement, and Teresa Lanz's statements to law enforcement. And last, the forensic evidence. This is the defendant's gun. You're going to hear that he is the rightful owner of that gun. He had bought that gun. You're going to hear that the defendant's DNA is on that gun. And the casings that are recovered on scene were fired from that gun. Now, some expectations as we move through this week. There's no video of the murder itself. There was no video on the living room of where this murder occurred. But with the surveillance videos and the circumstantial evidence, we were able to provide that timeline to the court. There are 2 missing casings from the crime scene, because you will hear from Dr. Ashraff that they were shot. There were 5 shots, but there are 2 missing casings. As I previously stated, the surveillance video in the front of the Hicks household is incredibly difficult to see because of the dark nature. However, Detective Smith will show and point where to look at the appropriate times. There is no perfect timeline. There never is. But we will present a timeline for the court to make the findings that we need to make. The defendant's statements during these interviews are odd at times, and you will not hear a specific motive in this case. Now, as the court knows, my duty is that the burden is on us. It's always on us. The burden of proof is always on the state to prove every criminal case as to each essential element of the crime charge beyond reasonable doubt, and that never shifts. Now, your duty this week is to listen to the evidence and ascertain the truth. What I mean by that is that I ask the court to look at the 5 C's. That's the corroboration of the evidence, consistencies and inconsistencies in the evidence, the credibility of the witnesses as they take the witness stand, and the conduct of the parties. And last, just common sense. At the end of the evidence, we will ask that you return a verdict that speaks the truth. There is only one truth in this case. And that truth is that the defendant is guilty to all counts of this indictment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Aiden Horowitz. Attorney Barrett, would you like to make your opening statement at this point?
It's very short.
Okay, you may proceed.
The object of all legal investigation, obviously, is to seek the truth. This is a very emotional case, very difficult case, as the court pointed out earlier. As the court already knows from your experience, the state has the duty and responsibility of proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And of course, what they say in opening is just what they allege the evidence to be. We'll have an opportunity to test that evidence and talk about it. Matthew believes that he has been set up by either FBI, CIA, or some government agency. I think you'll hear some information about that through his statements. The court will have the ability to listen to those and evaluate those. We believe that, and certainly are confident that the court, after you hear all the evidence in the case, will be able to make an enlightened and fair judgment as to the guilt of Matthew. We'll have an opportunity to come back before the court and talk about what the state's case has proven or not proven. Thank you.
Thank you.